Michigan shocked the world this past season. They went 12-2, beat Ohio State, won the Big Ten. Did their season end in a loss against Georgia in the Orange Bowl? Yes, but overall, their third 12-win season in program history. They beat Ohio State for the first time since 2011, beat up ranked Ohio State more specifically for the first time since 2003, and they won the Big Ten outright for the first time since 2003 as well, as the 2004 title was shared with, I believe, the Iowa Hawkeyes. So yeah, it was a successful season, and I, as a Michigan fan, even though I'm highly competitive and hated seeing the losses to MSU and Georgia, it is what it is. It's hard to go undefeated. Michigan went 12-2 and had a really good year. But in saying that, we now have to look into the future. And I'm not talking about predicting the next 5, 10, whatever years. Too far ahead. There are a lot of different unknowns that are going to pop up and such in those different years. I'm not making any predictions for a long period of time. I've already made a prediction about Michigan for 2022 by record and some other things, and I'm going to make more of them and talk more about it throughout this spring and summer, as summer is now approaching us fast. But today I'm going to talk about the expectations surrounding Michigan football, because now that 10-3, 10-3 was the norm before 12-2. It just was. 10-3 in 2015, 16, and 18. 3 10-win seasons. And then the expectations were lowered after 2020 when the team went 2-4 and no one knew, myself included, what was going on. It was a very low moment in Michigan football history and in everyone's life with the COVID-19 pandemic going on. Expectations were lowered then. Michigan fans and the media that had been supporting Harbaugh forever seemed to accept the fate, quote-unquote, of Michigan football under Jim Harbaugh as the most you can hope for is 10-3, 9-4, 8-5 is probably the most likely, and then maybe a 6-6, 7-5 down year sometimes. And now that 12-2 happened with the young staff, an instantaneous turnaround on defense, offense, just a complete turnaround. Michigan State also did this from 2020 to 2021. Probably only the two programs in the country to achieve those similar feats of going from 2 wins in 2020 to only 2 losses in 2021. Let me down below if there's another team you know of who did that from 2020 to 2021. But it was a fantastic year. You know it. You know how the story for Michigan football in 2021 went, so I'm not here to lecture you about that. But it was amazing. And because of that, I think the expectations have risen. It's my belief. I think that after his first Big Ten title, we finally had a taste of greatness for the first time in his 7, now coming on 8-year tenure here, and we want more of it as Michigan fans. Michigan fans are hungering for more of this, for more competitiveness. Michigan finally beat Ohio State. They're looking to possibly beat Michigan State this coming year along with Ohio State as well. It could be the first time Michigan beats both of those teams in the same year since they did in 2003. Michigan, there's no doubt in my mind, is looking to win the Big Ten, beat Ohio State, and win the national championship. There's no doubt in my mind the team is looking to do that, and I think the fan base is expecting more of that now that the curse of 10-3 has seemingly been broken. There are some who obviously think that 2021 was a fluke, and there are reasons to believe that. I myself did not think it was a fluke, and I think the perfect game that embodies that is the Ohio State game. And it's fitting because a lot of Ohio State fans, whether rightly or wrongly, I don't think there's a correct or incorrect opinion there, think it is a fluke. There's reasons that they do, but they're the biggest fan base that thinks that. And the game that disproves that the most, I think, is the Michigan-Ohio State game of 2021. You don't beat Ohio State the way Michigan did if it was a fluke win or a fluke year. You don't. That game was not an upset win. It was not a massive come-from-behind game that was only won by less than a touchdown. It was not Chris Davis returning a short field goal for 6. That's not how the game ended. The game was over, middle of the fourth quarter. I myself, as a Michigan fan, this past season believed there was maybe a 0.1% chance we would beat Ohio State this past season. And by the third quarter, I didn't want to believe it, but my brain was telling me there's no way Ohio State's winning this. Ohio State was being outcoached on both sides of the ball. Their players looked less physical, more soft. Ohio State, that game showed that they weren't used to having to work for every yard on offense and having to constantly defend against the run and do it effectively on defense. And I mean, Michigan, call it what it is. Michigan dominated that game, and you don't dominate a team like Ohio State in the regular season unless you are a great team, and not just a great team, but a team that is well coached, who had a well thought out plan, and who executed it. And those are not things of a fluky great team, for the most part. There are always exceptions to most rules, but it's not what happened here, in my opinion. But again, that's just my opinion. There are reasons to think that what Michigan did this past season was a fluke, and I think the biggest one is the fact that it took him 7 years to do it. 1 out of 7 years, he's won the Big Ten. 1 out of 7 years, he's won a bowl game. 1 out of 7 years, he's won 12 games or won more than 10 games. Those are the biggest reasons for that. And speaking of 10 wins, I think anything less than 10 wins in this regular season is actually disappointing. Let's look at the schedule and tell me in the comments below what you think about that claim that I just made after you listen to my overview of the schedule. Colorado State, September 3rd. Hawaii, September 10th. UConn, September 17th. Maryland, September 24th, which is homecoming. Those are 4 straight home games the entirety of the September slate. At Iowa, October 1st. At Indiana, October 8th. Hosting Penn State, October 15th. A bye, October 22nd. October 29th, hosting in-state rival Michigan State. Playing at Rutgers, November 5th. Hosting Nebraska, November 12th. Hosting Illinois, November 19th. And finally playing at the Ohio State Buckeyes, November 26th. Now, aside from Ohio State, and to a lesser degree, but still, Nebraska, Michigan State, at Iowa, nothing is guaranteed, and I get that. But you look at that schedule, and I look at that schedule, and I think, hey, that's closer to 8 guaranteed wins than not. And Nebraska, Michigan State, Iowa, Ohio State, I think are the 4 toughest games here. Michigan, I think, is closer to destined to winning 2 out of 4 of those games than not. With what they have returning, the staff, the incoming recruiting class, especially the offensive line returning production, and the transfer portal in Victor Oluwatimi, who's already came in fact, from Virginia and is doing very well there. Michigan's schedule aligns well. And the fact that they only have 4 road games and only 2 of them look like threats plays very well into how Michigan football functions. I think all of Michigan's top 10 wins are at home. So if Michigan State's a top 10 team, there's a much better chance Michigan's going to beat you in the Big House than at Spartan Stadium, which also makes the Ohio State game that much more glaring, but that's a topic for a different day, I think. Anyway, the schedule's cupcake for the most part. It's easy. There's no reason with the talent returning, with the staff returning, with the incoming recruiting class, and the one incoming elite transfer portal guy that Michigan can't go 10-2. I think 9-3 would be a disgrace, after what Michigan did in 2021. And that's just my opinion. You can disagree with it, but going from 12-1 before postseason play to 9-3 with an easier schedule, shameful. Absolutely shameful. And I think Michigan's ceiling is 12-0. I think this is possible, though very unlikely. I wouldn't say nearly impossible. I don't think it's actually close to being impossible, as I am high on this team, but it is unlikely. Ohio State is far more likely to go 12-0 and win the Big Ten than Michigan is. I can tell you that. But Michigan's floor is 9-3. Even though I think less than 10-2 would be a disappointment, I think Michigan very well could go less than 10-2, and that would likely be losses to Michigan State, at Ohio State, at Iowa, maybe switch out Michigan State or Iowa with Nebraska, but certainly Ohio State and two other teams out of Nebraska, Michigan State, and Iowa, with an emphasis on Michigan State because it's an in-state rival who's been out to get us and had a target on our back for years, and because it's at Iowa, and Iowa is always tough to play on the road. Think back to 2016, and think back to last year's Big Ten title game. They're going to want to have revenge on us. There's going to be a target on our back the minute we walk into Kinnick Stadium. It's a fact. It's an absolute fact. And credit to Coach Ferentz at Iowa for doing such an amazing job, even with the lack of offense for several years, the solid defense and special teams play, and that mental toughness, passionate fan base. It gives Iowa a fighting chance every time someone enters their stadium. It could be Bama. It could be Georgia. We've seen them blow out Ohio State in 2017. It could be anyone, honestly. So I think the expectations have risen. I think that now 10-3 in my opinion should now be the acceptable floor, maybe 9-4 of the program. Anything less than that should not be tolerated. And I think that now that we finally broken through the Ohio State barrier, not saying we're going to beat them again, as nothing's guaranteed and Harbaugh's 1-5 against them, but getting that first win is always hard against a team like Ohio State. And I think Michigan football is going to be given confidence. I think that they are trending upward, and I think that you're going to see more than 10-3 in the future, possibly another Big Ten title or two. But again, that's just my opinion. Now we're going to move on and talk about the 2022 team specifically, some things that I want to see that go along with some of my risen expectations. And the first thing is an improved pass offense with an X-factor wide receiver. And a lot of this has to do with the passing offense this past season. We didn't do it a whole lot. It was probably some of the least amount that Michigan has passed under Harbaugh in a season. But you know what it had that previous passing offenses didn't? Efficiency. And that was just all around, whether it was play calling, whether it was the fact that against Ohio State we didn't drop 100 passes. We actually caught a lot. It was phenomenal. I mean, going back to the Ohio State game, seeing Cornelius Johnson match up with Denzel Burke and actually get an advantage on him spoke to the wide receiver efficiency we had. And I don't think that this wide receiver room yet has a proven X-factor wide receiver, but that doesn't mean one can't be made. And I'm hoping that there is one. I think that guys like Andrell Anthony, Ronnie Bell, Darius Clemens even, despite him being a freshman, he looked deadly in the spring game. Going back to Cornelius Johnson, I think those are the main four guys that could be X-factor wide receivers, though I don't think all of them will be. That's, I would say, close to impossible for that to happen. Just one of them is all I'm asking for. Also, we'll get to Henning later involving the run threat, because it was mentioned by Harbaugh he's going to be used in a Deebo Samuel role. If Henning improves as a receiver but is also used in that Deebo Samuel role and it works, he could be the X-factor wide receiver. And I would not mind, that at all. I would love that. I would love more end arounds, more efficient, not just more in quantity, but more in quality end arounds as well. More outside runs with Henning's explosiveness on the ground. He also caught a fair amount of passes in the spring game too. But that's just the receiver position. You also got to look at quarterback. Cade McNamara, he was serviceable. I think out of the two quarterbacks, I think he's a better decision maker than McCarthy, at least right now. His pick in the Ohio State game was bad. One of his picks against Georgia was bad, but I think a lot of his mistakes in the Georgia game were just due to the fact that the system that he had been a part of just imploded. The Georgia game was not well planned, I don't think. There wasn't a lot of execution, and Georgia, I think, played one of their best games of the year. That's just my opinion again. So it was hard for him to really do anything because the supporting cast had all broken down. And even though you can, to a certain degree, blame him because he couldn't put the team on his back, how many QBs in college football can put a team on their back? For example, C.J. Stroud, he can only put the offense on his back. He can't command Ohio State's defense to stop Hassan Haskins. He's a player. Quarterbacks can only do so much. It's like Bryce Young. Part of the reason he won the game at Auburn and had a Heisman moment was because his defense helped stop Auburn from scoring another touchdown or another field goal by sacking TJ Finley to death. So I love McNamara, and I don't think a lot of the blame put on him is necessary or even right, but he does have a ceiling. And I want to see him either break through and have a much better year in terms of just being more on target with his passes, being more efficient, looking past his first read, which is, I think, his biggest struggle. And if he can't do that, then I hope that J.J. McCarthy steps in, because I know for closer to a fact that J.J. McCarthy certainly has that higher ceiling. He's better with his deep ball. He can put the offense on his back and make plays. He has that dual threat capability. It's awesome. And I think with seeing how McNamara played in spring ball, I do think now, even with his previous shoulder injury, I think McCarthy will start come fall. Going to the run game, I want to see Henning and Edwards diversify the run threat. Corum we know is good. He's, I think, not just good, I think he's an elite running back, so I'm not going to be talking about him. But the newcomers in the run game are going to be Donovan Edwards and A.J. Henning, because they're going to be used more, from what I can understand. They're going to have bigger roles on the offense, and I want to see them diversify the run threat. Edwards can diversify it with his receiving threat out of the backfield, whether it's on wheel routes, whatever. He is as good as a lot of wide receivers, except he comes out of the backfield, and he is also good at running the football. He's also taller and more of a power back than Corum is, so maybe he can help us replace Hassan Haskins, which would be great. A.J. Henning is fast, effective on end arounds. Seeing him in a running back role as the speedster, the explosive guy, like the thin explosive guy, would be really cool, I think. And also seeing him as a receiver as well, because he wasn't used a lot as a receiver this past year, would be cool too. So I think they can diversify the run threat. I think that you have Corum and Edwards, obviously, as the main running backs. Henning as kind of a wide back is, I think, the closest thing you could compare him to. Michigan having a diverse run threat will really help them, especially with the possibility of Michigan's O-line, as good as it was this past season. Look at the Georgia game. There's still plenty they can improve on. They can be better than they were this past season. It sounds hard to believe, but I think it's possible. Do I think it's a definite yes or definite no? No, it's too early to tell. You can only take so much of what you see from spring practice with a grain of salt, even though they looked really good in spring practice and they return a lot of production and bring some more in with Victor Oluwatimi coming in from Virginia, who looks to start at center. But the run threat, that being diversified along with an improved, more efficient, and more deadly pass game would make Michigan's offense one of the best in the nation. And I think next year, seeing that Michigan travels to Columbus and Ohio State's defense will be better, and just for teams, period, like Iowa's really deadly mistake, turnover, whatever you call it. Iowa's defense loves to just sit there, be patient, and force you to make mistakes. They just wait for mistakes to happen. And having a more diverse run game and a better pass game could really help against tougher defenses next year that we have to face, like at Iowa. Michigan State would be another team who I think is going to have a good front seven, and having a diverse run attack might allow us to run against a great front seven like one Michigan State is going to have, and especially against Ohio State as well. And finally, Michigan's defense to reload is something that I want to see. Reload, especially at the defensive line. Michigan lost so much on defense, but especially at defensive line. Aiden Hutchinson is gone. He's probably going to be the first or second overall pick in the draft. Christopher Hinton declared. Donovan Jeter declared. David Ajabo declared. Jordan Whiteley, who wasn't seen much but still depth piece on defense, and the defensive line, he declared. Josh Ross declared, although he was a linebacker, but still closer to the defensive line than a secondary player for sure. A lot of the defensive line and pass rush is gone. You have Mike Morris, Mozzie Smith, Chris Jenkins, and Jalen Harrell are your projected defensive line guys. More specifically, Mike Morris, Mozzie Smith, and Chris Jenkins, as Michigan ran that 3-4 defense, I believe, this past season. But still, the defensive line, it lost a lot. And it also returns a lot. Returned a lot of second-string guys who showed their own playmaking abilities, like Taylor Upshaw, Mike Morris, Mozzie Smith. And it also brings in a great freshman player in Mason Graham, who was a part of this 2022 recruiting class. I would love to see Michigan's defensive line reload. It's definitely not going to have the same pass rush as this past season, but you know what it can be better at than this previous D-line was? Defensive tackle play. Run stopping play. That's where it can be better. And I think that it's a great possibility that Michigan's defensive tackle play and run defense play can certainly improve at the defensive line, and I'm excited to see what happens. And for all these three things on my wish list, I think that to a certain degree, they'll come true. I think that Michigan will have a better passing offense. Don't know about the X Factor wide receiver part. I think that the second point is the one that's most likely to come true, with Henning and Edwards diversifying the run threat, and the run threat being even bigger than it was this past season. Michigan's defense reloading is probably the biggest question mark because of how much it's lost. The new defensive coordinator, Mike Elston, I have no doubts, is a better D-line coach and recruiter than Sean Newell, but it's year one. He's not working with Aiden Hutchinson, David Ajabo, Donovan Jeter, and Christopher Hinton anymore. All those four are gone. So it's going to be a big job to reload Michigan's defense. But those are just some things I want to see for this 2022 season, and that's all I have to say for this video. If you like this video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, comment your thoughts down below. Not only on Michigan's expectations, but also what you want to see in 2022. So comment down below your expectations for Michigan, whether you're a Michigan fan or not, moving forward, and for 2022 specifically, along with some things you are curious to see from Michigan football for this season. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys around. Bye.